My parents hid everything, took my savings for cruises and luxury brands, then left my 5-year-old alone, and what I exposed in court destroyed them. I'm 36, male, divorced, and have full custody of my son, Finn, who is 5 years old. Life's been tough since my engineering firm downsized last year. I took a pay cut but managed to land a senior project manager role at half my previous salary, $75,000 instead of $150,000. My ex-wife, Vanessa, is basically worthless as a parent. She moved to New Zealand with her CrossFit instructor boyfriend 3 months ago and couldn't care less about our kid. When I mentioned I needed someone to watch Finn during my upcoming work trip, she just texted back, "Not my problem," and hasn't responded since. I grew up in a typical middle-class household in Ohio. Dad worked as an insurance adjuster. Mom was an elementary school secretary. On the surface, everything looked normal, but behind closed doors, they were always focused on themselves. Family vacations were always what they wanted to do. Christmas gifts were always what they thought I should have. My accomplishments were only important if they could brag about them to their friends. I spent my childhood trying not to burden them with my existence. When I had Finn, I promised myself I'd be different. I'd actually put my kid first. After the divorce, I worked my ass off to create stability for him. Consistent routines, a good preschool, and a decent apartment in a safe neighborhood. It's not perfect, but Finn is happy, and that's what matters. What no one realizes is that I've been financially supporting my parents for years. It started small, helping with grocery bills when Dad got forced into early retirement at 67. His pension was decent but not enough for their lifestyle. Then it became property tax payments when they complained about possibly having to sell the house. Then it was helping them refinance their mortgage under my name since their credit had tanked after maxing out credit cards. I've been sending them $1,200 every month for the past 3 years just to keep them afloat. They'd never admit it to their country club friends, but I'm basically the reason they haven't lost everything. The most infuriating part? They still take annual vacations, still have their expensive golf club memberships, still get weekly manicures and pedicures and massages. When I suggested they cut back on luxuries to save money, my mother looked at me like I'd suggested she cut off her own arm. "We've worked hard all our lives," she said. "We deserve to enjoy our retirement." So, when my boss, Dave, told me I needed to go to Denver for a 10-day training session that could potentially secure the company's biggest contract yet, $2.3 million, I was screwed. This wasn't optional. Either I go to this training or I'd likely be part of the next round of layoffs. But who would watch Finn? My sister, Melissa, lives in Portland with her own 3 kids, so flying across the country wasn't feasible. My closest buddy, Ryan, had just started chemo for stage 2 lymphoma. My neighbor, Mrs. Harrison, who sometimes watches Finn after school, was visiting her daughter, who just had a baby. That's when my coworker, Tom, suggested something that would end up being the biggest mistake of my life. Why not ask your parents? Don't they live like 40 minutes away? I hadn't asked them for anything in years besides helping them with money. Our relationship was civil but distant. They'd see Finn maybe 4 times a year, usually just dropping by for an hour with some random toy before complaining about traffic and leaving. They never offered to babysit, never asked how we were doing when money was tight, but I was desperate. When I called, my mom acted surprisingly excited. "Our precious grandson. Of course we'll watch him, won't we, Richard?" I heard my dad grunt in the background. "We've been saying we need more time with him. Honestly, it felt off from the start. My mom, Patricia, 60, female, is obsessed with her weekly bridge club and spa appointments. My dad, Richard, 63, male, golfs every Tuesday and Thursday without fail and spends the rest of his time watching sports in his recliner. They're not exactly the drop-everything for family types, but again, I was desperate. So I drove Finn over to their renovated colonial house in the suburbs, the one they bought after selling our family home the second I left for college. I brought everything Finn would need: his favorite stuffed dinosaur, his special blanket, his rescue inhaler for his mild asthma, his iPad loaded with educational games and detailed schedules. He needs his inhaler if he starts wheezing or coughing. I explained, bedtime is 7:30 and he needs his bear and blanket, or he can't sleep. Call me anytime, day or night. My mom waved her hand dismissively. "Stop hovering, Ethan. We raised you, didn't we? We know how to take care of a child." As I drove away, I saw Finn's little face pressed against the window, and something in my gut said this was a mistake. I ignored it and kept driving, even as my phone buzzed with a text from my dad. "Can you transfer the mortgage payment early this month?" The HOA dues went up again. The first few days in Denver were intense, 12-hour sessions learning the new software system our company was implementing. Every night I'd call my parents' house to check on Finn. "He's fine, Ethan," my mom would say. "We took him to the park today, or he's already asleep." Such an energetic boy. I'd asked to speak to Finn, but it was always, "He's in the bath," or "He's playing outside," or "He just fell asleep." I never actually spoke to my son during those calls. Not once. They sent a few pictures: Finn feeding ducks at the pond, Finn with an ice cream cone, normal grandparent stuff. I relaxed a bit. Maybe I was wrong about them. Maybe they really had stepped up. On day 4, I got a notification from my bank. $3,000 had been withdrawn from my emergency savings account. I immediately called my mother. "Oh, that," she said casually. "The air conditioning unit broke. We had to get it fixed right away because of Finn's asthma." It seemed reasonable, so I didn't question it. I just asked her to send me the invoice when she got it. "Of course, honey. So busy with Finn, though. Might be a few days." Then, on day 7 of my trip, I got a text from someone I barely knew, Frank, my parents' next-door neighbor. I'd met him once at their Christmas party years ago. He was a retired Marine who now worked as a security consultant. The text read, "Your number was on the emergency contact list in your parents' kitchen. Need to talk about your son. Call a SAP." My stomach dropped. I called immediately. "Ethan," Frank said, his voice serious, "I've been hearing crying from your parents' house since yesterday afternoon. On and off sobbing, like a kid in distress. Their cars are gone." I knocked, rang the bell, no answer. I walked around the property and peeked in windows. Can't see anyone, but I can still hear crying. I felt like I was going to throw up. "Have you seen my parents?" "Not since Tuesday morning when they loaded suitcases into their car." "I thought maybe they took your son with them." 3 days. My parents had been gone for 3 days. I called their cells, straight to voicemail. I called their house phone, no answer. I even called my mom's friend Judy, no answer. I texted my mom, "Where is Finn?" 5 minutes later, my phone rang. It was Frank again. I called the police for a welfare check. They just arrived. I heard voices in the background. Then Frank came back on. "They're breaking in now, hold on." The next 30 seconds were the longest of my life. Then Frank's voice, tight with anger. "They found your boy. He's alone. He's alive but injured. Looks like he fell trying to get food from the kitchen counter. His arm is swollen, possibly broken. Paramedics are on the way." I don't remember much about the next hour. I know I booked the first flight back to Ohio, $1,600 I couldn't afford. I know I called my boss and told him there was a family emergency. I know I sat in the airport bathroom and vomited from stress. When the plane landed 6 hours later, I had 17 missed calls from Frank, the hospital, and a number I didn't recognize. I called Frank first as I sprinted to get a rental car. "Finn's at Children's Hospital," he said. "Broken arm, dehydration, and he's pretty traumatized. Police are involved now. Your parents still aren't answering calls." I broke every speed limit getting to the hospital. When I finally reached Finn's room, there was a nurse checking his vitals and a woman in a pantsuit who introduced herself as Diane from Child Protective Services. Finn was asleep, his small arm in a cast, and 4 in his other arm. His face was pale, with tear streaks still visible on his cheeks. His blanket was nowhere in sight. "Mr. Reeves," Diane said quietly, "we need to discuss what happened." According to Frank's statement and Finn's limited explanation, my parents had left Tuesday morning. They told Finn they were going on a quick trip and would be back very soon. They left some chips, cookies, and juice boxes on the kitchen counter, locked all the cabinets, and left. Finn stayed alone for 3 days. When he got hungry and the snacks ran out, he tried climbing onto the counter to reach the cereal on top of the fridge. He fell and broke his arm. He couldn't reach the phone to call for help. He couldn't open the child-proofed front door. He spent at least 24 hours in pain, hungry, terrified, and alone. The police were now looking for my parents. His social worker wanted to know if I had any idea where they might be. I didn't. But then I remembered something. My mom's Facebook addiction. Sure enough, when I checked her page from my phone, there it was. A check-in from a cruise ship in the Caribbean, with the caption, "Surprise getaway with my love." Sometimes you just need to treat yourself. I showed Diane the post, dated 2 days after they left Finn. She took pictures for her report. "We'll need a statement from you," she said, "and we'll need to follow up to ensure your son's safety." The doctor came in later and explained that Finn was lucky. A simple fracture that would heal in 6 to 8 weeks. The dehydration was mild. Physically, he would recover quickly. Emotionally was another story. "You should prepare yourself," the doctor warned. "He's going to have trust issues, probably separation anxiety." He kept asking why his grandparents left him, and when you were coming back. I spent the night in a chair beside his bed, holding his good hand, wondering how I could have been so stupid as to trust my parents. While Finn slept, I started checking my accounts more carefully. What I found made me physically sick. Over the past week, my parents had withdrawn $3,000 for the supposed AC repair, charged $2,500 at Nordstrom, made a $5,000 down payment to Lexus Financial Services, charged $4,892 to Royal Caribbean Cruises, spent $1,750 at Tiffany & Company, and charged another $2,345 at various high-end stores. All told, they'd stolen $19,487 from me in just 1 week. Money I didn't have. Money that was supposed to pay for Finn's preschool, our rent, my car payment. I checked my online banking records and found they'd been siphoning smaller amounts for months. $200 here, $300 there, always with some excuse about emergency house repairs or medical bills. I'd been so busy with work and Finn that I hadn't noticed. The next morning, I called my bank and credit card companies to report the fraud and freeze my accounts. Then I called Sarah, the lawyer who had handled my divorce. I need everything you can throw at them, I told her. Fraud charges, lawsuit, restraining order. Restraining order might be tough without a direct threat, she warned, but the fraud and child endangerment, that's solid. Finn was released from the hospital that afternoon. I took him home, got him settled with his favorite movies and some chicken soup, and started making calls. First, I contacted the mortgage company. It turned out my parents had refinanced the house again last month, taking out a $50,000 home equity loan. And, yes, they'd forged my signature since I was co-owner. The loan officer remembered them specifically because they'd been so excited about their cruise. Next, I called their property tax office. For 3 years, I'd been sending my parents $30,800 quarterly to cover the property taxes. The tax office confirmed they were paid up, but the actual amount was only $1,800 per quarter. My parents had been pocketing $2,000 every 3 months. The more I dug, the worse it got. The emergency medical bills I'd paid last year, no record at their doctor's office. The essential car repairs I'd funded, their mechanic hadn't seen them in over a year. For at least 3 years, they'd been bleeding me dry while living way beyond their means. And now they'd abandoned my son, left him to get injured, also they could take a freaking cruise. I knew they would return eventually. What I didn't know was when or what I would do when they did. The answer came 3 days later. Frank texted, "They're back. Just drove up in a shiny new Lexus with the dealer plate still on it." 2 hours later, my phone rang. It was my mother, her voice breezy, like nothing had happened.
"Ethan, honey, we just got back from the most wonderful cruise. The Royal Caribbean has the most amazing food."
"Sorry we missed your calls. The ship's Wi-Fi was just terrible." I said nothing.
"Ethan, are you there?"
"Where's Finn?" I finally asked. "What do you mean?"
"He's with you, isn't he? Your trip ended yesterday."
"My trip ended a week early because Finn was in the hospital with a broken arm after you abandoned him." Silence. Then, abandoned is a very strong word, Ethan. "We left him plenty of snacks." I hung up and drove to their house. The new Lexus sat in the driveway, still shiny. I pounded on their front door until my dad opened it, looking annoyed. "Keep it down, would you? The neighbors will think something's wrong." I pushed past him into their house. My mother was in the living room, unpacking shopping bags full of designer clothes. She looked up surprised. "Ethan, we were just about to call you. The cruise was a last-minute deal, too good to pass up. We left Finn plenty of food." "He broke his arm trying to reach more food after what you left ran out," I said, my voice eerily calm. "He was alone for 3 days, he could have died." My mother rolled her eyes. "Don't be so dramatic. Kids are resilient. He's 5 years old," I shouted. My father stepped forward. "Lower your voice in my house." "Your house?" I laughed. "The house I've been making half the payments on for the last 3 years because you complained you couldn't afford the property taxes on your retirement? That house?" My mother at least had the decency to look uncomfortable. "We were going to tell you about the cruise, but you've been so uptight lately about money and schedules." I looked around the living room, noticing new shopping bags from high-end stores. Then I spotted the credit card statement on the coffee table. I grabbed it before my father could stop me. Royal Caribbean, $4,892. Tiffany & Company. $1,750. Nordstrom, $2,345. Lexus Financial Services, $5,000 down payment. You spent over $14,000 on a luxury vacation and shopping spree. Where did you get this kind of money? My mother snatched the statement back. "That's none of your business. It is if you're using the emergency card I added you to for Finn's medical expenses." Her silence confirmed it. I felt something snap inside me. "You stole money from me, abandoned my son, and he got hurt because of you. He was alone and terrified for 3 days." My father scoffed. "He's fine. Kids get hurt all the time. He has nightmares now. He's afraid to be alone in a room. He asks me every night if I'm coming back in the morning." My mother waved dismissively. "He'll get over it. Children are so dramatic at that age. That's when I saw Finn's dinosaur and blanket, stuffed in a corner behind the couch like trash they hadn't bothered to throw away yet. I picked them up and walked toward the door. "You'll be hearing from my lawyer and the police." My father actually laughed. "Don't be ridiculous. No one's going to arrest us for taking a vacation. Child endangerment, fraud, theft, forgery, take your pick." My mother's face finally showed a flicker of concern. "Ethan, you're being extreme. We're family. Family doesn't steal from each other. Family doesn't abandon a 5-year-old. "One more thing," I said. "I'm stopping all payments. Figure out how to pay your own mortgage." The next morning, I met with Sarah and laid out everything. The abandonment, the theft, the forgery, the years of financial deception. "We need to move fast," she advised. "They'll start hiding assets as soon as they realize you're serious." I signed papers authorizing her to freeze my parents' bank accounts that I had legal ties to. I filed a police report about the credit card fraud and forgery. I met with Diane from CPS again and gave her every detail about my parents' neglect of Finn. The DA will be in touch, she assured me. What they did was criminal. That afternoon, I got calls from 3 different family friends. Apparently, my parents were spreading a story that I was having a mental breakdown and making up lies because I was jealous of their retirement lifestyle. According to them, they'd only stepped out for a quick errand, and Finn had overreacted to being alone. I didn't bother responding. The evidence would speak for itself. The next day, a detective called to take my statement about the financial crimes. I provided bank statements, transfer records, emails, texts, everything showing how my parents had systematically defrauded me for years. This is pretty clear-cut, the detective noted. Most financial crimes are more subtle. 3 days later, my parents were arrested, not for the child endangerment, that case was still being built, but for the credit card fraud and forgery. They spent exactly 6 hours in jail before Marcus, my dad's golf buddy and former judge, posted their bail. The news spread fast. By that evening, my phone was blowing up with messages from relatives and family friends, all demanding to know how I could do this to my elderly parents. I blocked them all. 2 weeks after Finn came home from the hospital, I received an unexpected visitor, my mother's younger sister, Carol. She and I had never been close. She lived in California and only visited every few years, but apparently she'd flown in specifically to see me. "I need to show you something," she said when I let her into my apartment. Finn was napping in his room. "Patricia's been telling everyone you're on a vendetta against them, but this didn't add up." She pulled out her phone and showed me emails from my mother dating back weeks in them. My mother complained about having to watch Finn, calling it a burden, and saying she had better things to do than be an unpaid babysitter. The last email, sent just days before they left Finn alone, read, "Richard and I found an amazing last-minute cruise deal. We've already paid the deposit. I know we're supposed to watch Ethan's kid, but we deserve this vacation. The boy will be fine for a few days." I felt sick reading it. "Why are you showing me this?" Carol looked down. "Because they did the same thing to me when I was 7. Left me alone for a weekend while they went to Chicago. I fell and hit my head on the coffee table. A neighbor found me unconscious. They've always been like this, selfish, irresponsible. I've spent decades in therapy because of them." She paused. "I've kept quiet all these years because that's what family does, but when I heard what happened to Finn, I couldn't stay silent anymore." Carol agreed to give a statement to the police and testify if needed. Her evidence of premeditation changed everything. The district attorney decided to pursue criminal charges for child endangerment. My civil suit for the stolen money moved forward. My parents hired an expensive lawyer, but their defense was falling apart. Their friends slowly stopped calling me as the truth came out. The poor, misunderstood grandparents' narrative was crumbling. The criminal case moved quickly. My parents pleaded not guilty at first, but when Carol's evidence was submitted, and Frank from next door testified about hearing Finn crying for days, their lawyer advised them to take a plea deal. They each got 2 years probation, 200 hours of community service, and mandatory parenting classes. The judge also ordered them to pay for Finn's medical bills and therapy. But the real hit came from my civil suit. The judge was furious about the credit card fraud, especially when he learned they'd used my emergency card for a luxury cruise while leaving a child alone. He awarded me $14,000 for the stolen money, plus $50,000 in punitive damages. The final blow was the lien I put on their house, the house I'd been helping pay for. My lawyer discovered they had refinanced it to pay for their new Lexus, using documents with my forged signature. Since I was technically co-owner, the foreclosure notice came 3 weeks later. Their bank accounts were frozen pending the fraud investigation. Their credit cards were maxed out. Their country club membership was revoked when they couldn't make the quarterly dues payment. The local paper ran a small story about the case. Grandparents plead guilty to child endangerment, which was picked up by the local news stations. My parents' faces were plastered across the evening news. Their carefully constructed social image crumbled overnight. My mother's bridge club publicly voted to remove her. The president, a woman named Eleanor, whom my mother had always tried to impress, sent a formal letter stating that the club does not condone child endangerment or criminal behavior. My father was asked to resign from the Homeowners Association board. His golf buddies suddenly had no tea times available. The charity gala committee my mother had fought to join rescinded her membership. The Lexus was repossessed. The cruise pictures were taken down from Facebook after too many negative comments. The new designer clothes hung unworn in their closets. 3 months after it all started, I received a text from my father, "We need to talk." I ignored it. The next day, my mother showed up at my apartment. "Please," she said when I opened the door, 5 minutes. I let her in but kept Finn in his room with his iPad and headphones. I didn't want him anywhere near her. "We're being evicted," she said without preamble. "The bank's foreclosing. We have nowhere to go." "That sounds like a you problem," I replied. "All our credit cards are maxed out. Your father's pension doesn't cover our basic expenses. No one will rent to us with the criminal record and eviction. We've lost everything. Our friends won't talk to us. The country club revoked our membership. Even the church asked us not to come back after someone recognized us from the news. Consequences, I said simply. You're experiencing consequences for your actions. We're your parents, she snapped, suddenly angry. You owe us. I owed you nothing, and I still gave you everything. You stole from me, abandoned my son, and tried to ruin my career. Give me one good reason why I should help you now. Because we have nowhere else to go, she admitted. Your father refuses to ask his brother. Carol won't speak to us. Our friends have all abandoned us. Our savings are gone. What about the cruise, the Lexus, the shopping sprees? Where did all that money go? She looked away. The cruise was non-refundable. The Lexus was repossessed. Everything else went to legal fees. I almost laughed at the absurdity. They'd blown all their money on luxuries they couldn't afford, stolen from me to fund their lifestyle, and now expected me to bail them out again. We need a place to stay, just until we get back on our feet. And how long will that take? Months? Years? The rest of your lives? She didn't answer. Where's Dad? I asked. In the car. He was too proud to come in and beg. That was my father, always, too proud to admit when he needed help, but never too proud to take advantage of others. So he sent you instead. Typical. Please, she whispered, we're desperate. I'll help on one condition, I finally said. You sign the house over to me before foreclosure completes. Move into the small rental property I own across town, and you'll only see Finn under my supervision, once he's ready, which might be never. Her face froze. That tiny condo you bought as an investment, it's half the size of our house. It's more than you deserve. And you'd have to pay rent. Market rate, no special treatment. That's ridiculous, she snapped. We're your parents. We raised you. We gave you everything. You gave me trust issues and an empty bank account, and you nearly killed my son with your selfishness. Take the deal or leave it. She stood up, face red with anger. You've always been ungrateful, always been jealous of what we have. This is just your way of finally controlling us. What you had, I corrected, past tense. And no, this is my way of ensuring you face consequences while still not letting you end up homeless, which is more than you deserve. Tell Dad he has 24 hours to decide. After that, I'm letting the foreclosure complete, and you can figure it out yourselves. She stormed out, slamming the door behind her. I expected that to be the end of it. My father was too proud to accept my terms. They'd find someone else to leech off of. But 23 hours later, my phone rang. We'll take the deal, my father said, his voice tight with suppressed rage, but only because we have no choice. After my parents moved into the condo, I set up automated payment tracking for their rent. The first month, their payment arrived 2 days late. I immediately sent a formal notice of late payment with a $50 penalty. My father called furious. This is ridiculous. We're family, not some random tenants. You're tenants who have a proven track record of financial irresponsibility, I replied. The rules are clearly outlined in the lease you signed. The next day, the payment plus penalty appeared in my account. The following months, their rent was always on time. I hired a financial advisor to help me clean up the mess my parents had created. The extent of their fraud was worse than I'd initially thought. They'd opened 3 credit cards in my name that I didn't know about, maxed them out, and never made payments. My credit score had tanked to 580. Meanwhile, my parents were experiencing true financial hardship for the first time in their lives. My father's pension covered their basic living expenses, but nothing more. No golf membership, no spa days, no bridge club dues, no designer clothes or luxury vacations. 2 months into their new living situation, my mother texted me photos of their empty refrigerator. We need grocery money, running low on food. I ignored it. 3 hours later, my father called. Your mother hasn't eaten properly in days, he said accusingly. There's a food bank 2 blocks from the condo, I replied. A food bank? Us? That's for poor people. Exactly. The following week, I drove past the condo and saw my father's car wasn't there. Later, Frank texted to tell me he'd seen my dad working as a greeter at the local Walmart, something he'd always mocked as a job for failures. My mother started selling her clothes and jewelry on consignment. She'd text me photos of each item with passive-aggressive messages like, forced to sell my anniversary bracelet today, or your father bought me this coat when you were born. I never responded. 4 months after the court case, I ran into Eleanor, the president of my mother's former bridge club, at the grocery store. She pulled me aside, expression serious. I wanted you to know your mother showed up at our luncheon last week, uninvited, made a scene, claiming we'd abandoned her when she needed us most. Security had to escort her out. Similar stories kept emerging. My father had been banned from his favorite golf course after showing up repeatedly without membership, trying to guilt former friends into paying his guest fees. My mother had been asked to leave a church fundraiser after loudly complaining that no one helps the truly needy anymore. Their desperation was reaching new levels. I started getting calls from their neighbors at the condo complex. My parents were going door to door, telling elaborate sob stories about medical bills and asking for loans. When that didn't work, they turned to more aggressive tactics. My father cornered my boss in the company parking lot. trying to convince him that I was mentally unstable and financially abusing my elderly parents. Luckily, my boss had been fully briefed on the situation and had security escort him off the property. My mother created a GoFundMe campaign with the title Elderly Couple Financially Ruined by Vengeful Son. It included a carefully edited version of events, portraying them as loving grandparents who'd made one small mistake and were now being punished beyond reason. I had my lawyer send a cease and desist letter. When the campaign had raised precisely $37 from two distant relatives who didn't know the full story, GoFundMe removed it for fraudulent claims after I submitted court documents. Their social isolation was complete. Former friends crossed the street to avoid them. Country club acquaintances blocked their numbers. Even distant relatives stopped responding to their increasingly desperate messages. The reality they'd spent decades constructing, successful, respected pillars of the community, had completely collapsed. They were now viewed as what they truly were: neglectful, selfish people who'd abandoned a child and committed fraud. 6 months into their new living situation, I received a text from my mother with a photo of an eviction notice. "Please help us. We have nowhere to go." I called my property manager immediately. "They haven't paid rent in 2 months, she explained. "I've sent multiple notices. They keep saying their son will handle it." I was furious but not surprised. They were still trying to manipulate the situation, assuming I'd bail them out rather than let them be evicted. That evening, they both showed up at my apartment. My father looked thinner, his previously immaculate appearance now disheveled. My mother had aged years and months, the stress evident in her face. "We need to talk," my father said, no longer commanding but pleading. "You're being evicted," I stated flatly. "We can't pay the rent," my mother admitted. "Your father's pension doesn't cover everything, and no one will hire us with our record. You signed a legally binding lease agreement. You knew the terms. We're your parents." My father exploded, a flash of his old entitlement breaking through. "You can't just throw us out on the street. I'm not throwing you anywhere. You're failing to meet your financial obligations, just like you failed to meet your obligations to Finn." My mother started crying. "We made one mistake with Finn. One, and you've punished us for months. When does it end?" "We're sorry," my father said, not sounding sorry at all. "Is that what you want to hear? We're sorry, now help us. You have options: downsize to a smaller apartment, apply for senior housing, sell your remaining assets, ask other relatives for help, get jobs." Jobs? At our age? My mother looked horrified. Plenty of seniors work. Walmart seemed fine hiring Dad. My father's face flushed with humiliation. "That was temporary. Then find something permanent. The point is, your problems are not my problems anymore." As I opened the door, my mother made one last desperate attempt. "If you help us this one last time, we'll never ask for anything again. We promise. Figure it out yourselves." I closed the door on their stunned faces. They called 17 times that night. I blocked their numbers. They sent emails. I filtered them to spam. They showed up at my apartment. The next morning, I didn't answer the door. 3 days later, Frank called to tell me they'd been physically removed from the condo by sheriff's deputies. They'd apparently refused to leave until forced. "Any idea where they went?" I asked. "I heard your father's brother finally took them in," Frank said reluctantly. "That was 2 weeks ago. I haven't heard from them since. Maybe they finally realized I meant what I said." Finn and I are closing on our new house next week. A modest 3-bedroom with a backyard for him to play in. Sometimes I think about my parents and wonder if I was too harsh. Then I remember Finn's face in that hospital bed. I remember their complete lack of remorse. Sometimes the family you're born into isn't the family you need. Sometimes you have to build something better for the next generation. My parents had their chance. They blew it. Now it's my turn to show Finn what a real family looks like. One built on respect, responsibility, and genuine care. Things my parents never understood.